Arthur Penshaw hummed a low, contented tune as he rotated a slab of St. Louis cut ribs within the belly of his custom-built smoker. The contraption was a beast of polished stainless steel and black iron, a far cry from the kettle grills that populated most suburban backyards. He'd christened her Bessie. Bessie was a labor of love, meticulously designed and built over a year of weekends, a testament to Arthur's unwavering belief in the art of low and slow. He ran a calloused hand along Bessie's warm flank, feeling the steady thrum of the fire within. The air hung thick and fragrant with the promise of smoked pork, a blend of hickory, applewood, and a whisper of cherry that Arthur guarded as fiercely as a pirate guarding his treasure. He spritzed the ribs with a mixture of apple cider vinegar and his secret blend of spices, a recipe passed down from his grandfather, tweaked and perfected over decades of backyard barbecues and competitive cook-offs. Harmony Glades, on the other hand, was a place of order and precision, a testament to the power of conformity. Every lawn was an emerald carpet, trimmed to precisely 2.5 inches. Every house was painted in one of 5 approved shades of beige. The mailbox posts all sported the same ornate, black wrought-iron design. The Homeowners Association, a committee of meticulously coiffed women and stern-faced men in khakis, ruled Harmony Glades with an iron fist, ensuring that every resident adhered to the strict code of conduct. Deviation was frowned upon. Individuality was discouraged. Arthur, with his booming laugh, stained t-shirts, and his passion for all things smoked, was an anomaly in Harmony Glades, a square peg stubbornly refusing to fit into a perfectly round hole. He knew his barbecue was a point of contention, a fragrant rebellion against the bland uniformity of the neighborhood. He'd received the polite yet pointed glances, the thinly veiled complaints about unusual aromas wafting over the meticulously manicured hedges. But Arthur, a firm believer in the pursuit of happiness and the freedom to smoke meat, had always politely ignored them. He checked the temperature gauge on Bessie, adjusting the dampers with practiced ease. The internal temperature was holding steady at 225 degrees, the sweet spot for breaking down the tough connective tissue and rendering the fat into succulent, melt-in-your-mouth goodness. Another hour or so, he figured, and these ribs would be ready to unleash their smoky glory upon the world. Next, he turned his attention to the brisket, a massive slab of beef that had been marinating in a dry rub for the past 24 hours. The aroma was intoxicating, a complex symphony of pepper, paprika, garlic, and a hint of chili. He carefully placed it on the smoker grate, ensuring it was positioned to receive the maximum amount of smoke. Across the street behind the perfectly symmetrical rose bushes, Mrs. Henderson peeked through her pristine lace curtains. Her nose twitched at that smell. It was intoxicating, undeniably delicious, but utterly disruptive. She pursed her lips. She had just finished airing out the house after using her lavender-scented diffuser. Now this. She made a mental note to bring it up at the next HOA meeting. Unapproved odors, she'd call them. A nuisance. 2 doors down, Mr. Peterson, a retired accountant who prided himself on his meticulous lawn care, paused mid-mow. The roar of his electric mower momentarily drowned out the symphony of the neighborhood, but the aroma it cut through the noise, a siren song of smoky goodness. He gripped the mower handles a little tighter. He was supposed to be starting on the edging. He swallowed, his stomach rumbling softly. He told himself it was the exertion of mowing, but deep down he knew it was the siren call of Arthur's barbecue. He finished his row quickly, trying to ignore the tempting scent, and hurried inside. Meanwhile, the aroma continued to spread, carried on the gentle breeze, weaving its way through the manicured lawns and perfectly pruned hedges of Harmony Glades. A subtle shift occurred. A few windows were cracked open. Dogs began to whine softly at their back doors. The air, once sterile and predictable, now hummed with a primal, undeniable craving. Arthur, oblivious to the subtle unrest he was causing, smiled contentedly. He knew the power of good barbecue. It was more than just food. It was a connection, a shared experience, a celebration of flavor and community. He glanced at the setting sun, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Almost time. He opened the smoker door, a plume of fragrant smoke billowing out, and reached for his tongs. The moment of truth was at hand. The aroma intensified, a promise of smoky perfection, a delicious challenge to the carefully constructed harmony of Harmony Glades. The crisp white envelope felt absurdly formal in Arthur's greasy hands. He just pulled a rack of ribs from the smoker, the air thick with hickory and sweet paprika. The sun was setting, painting the meticulously manicured lawns of Willow Creek Estates in hues of orange and purple, a scene of suburban tranquility utterly at odds with the official-looking document he now held. It was addressed to Mr. Arthur Penshaw, resident, and bore the embossed seal of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. He wiped his hands on his apron, leaving a smudge of crimson sauce, and tore open the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of pristine white paper, typed in an unforgiving Times New Roman font, awaited. He scanned it, a slow dawning of disbelief spreading across his face. Citation, it declared in bold letters at the top. Beneath that, in smaller, equally assertive type, violation of Covenant 3.2, paragraph B, subsection Roman 4, unapproved atmospheric emissions. Arthur reread it, the scent of smoked meat suddenly feeling less celebratory and more illicit. Unapproved atmospheric emissions. Was this some kind of joke? The citation went on to detail the nature of his offense. On the evening of Tuesday, July 18th, at approximately 6:30 p.m., a resident registered a formal complaint regarding the emission of strong, pervasive, and potentially objectionable odors emanating from the property located at 14 Oakwood Lane. Said odors were identified as being consistent with the preparation of smoked meat products, specifically ribs and brisket. Such emissions are in direct violation of Covenant 3.2, paragraph B, subsection Roman 4, which prohibits any activity that creates, causes, or allows the emission of noxious or offensive odors that may unreasonably interfere with the quiet enjoyment of neighboring properties. Arthur snorted, picturing Mrs. Henderson from next door, her nose wrinkled in perpetual disapproval of anything that wasn't perfectly beige. The citation concluded with a stern warning. Further violations will result in escalating fines as outlined in the HOA Handbook. Section 7, Appendix C. Resident is hereby instructed to cease and desist all activities that produce unapproved atmospheric emissions. Acceptable alternatives include the use of odorless electric heating appliances for culinary purposes. Odorless electric heating appliances. He, Arthur Penshaw, Michelin-starred chef and pitmaster extraordinaire, reduced to a George Foreman grill. The absurdity of it all struck him, and he burst out laughing, a deep, rumbling sound that startled a nearby robin. But beneath the amusement, a flicker of irritation sparked. This wasn't just some minor infraction. It was an assault on his craft, his passion. He flipped the citation over, hoping for a signature, a name, anything to direct his simmering indignation. There it was at the bottom in a neat, unwavering script: Mildred McMillan, HOA Secretary. Mildred McMillan. He knew the name. The self-appointed guardian of Willow Creek's aesthetic purity. He'd seen her patrolling the neighborhood in her sensible shoes and beige cardigan, armed with a measuring tape and a disapproving glare, ready to pounce on any errant weed or improperly aligned garbage can. He'd even witnessed her scolding a child for riding their bike on the sidewalk. Mildred McMillan, he imagined, probably had a spice rack alphabetized by genus and species. Her idea of a culinary adventure was adding a pinch of dried parsley to her bland, flavorless chicken breast. The woman likely considered ketchup a gourmet condiment. He crumpled the citation in his fist, then smoothed it out again. No, he wouldn't let her get to him. He wouldn't let some rule-obsessed busybody dictate how he lived his life, how he practiced his art. He took a deep breath, inhaling the smoky aroma of the ribs, a defiant act of olfactory rebellion. He glanced at the rapidly cooling smoker, a sudden resolve hardening his features. Mildred McMillan wanted a war of the roses. Fine, he'd give her a war of the ribs. The community hall smelled faintly of lemon-scented disinfectant and unfulfilled potential. Arthur adjusted his tie, the crisp cotton suddenly feeling like a noose. He hadn't worn one in months, preferring the comfortable give of a well-worn chef's coat. This HOA meeting, though, felt like a different arena altogether. He stood at the designated podium, the microphone amplifying the nervous tremor in his voice. Good evening. My name is Arthur Penshaw, and I'm here regarding the citation I received concerning unapproved atmospheric emissions. He held up the offending document, the bureaucratic language a stark contrast to the rich, smoky aroma it described. A ripple of whispers went through the 20 or so residents scattered in the folding chairs. Mildred McMillan, the HOA secretary, sat at the head table, her expression as sharp and unforgiving as a freshly honed carving knife. It was her signature that adorned the citation, the M. McMillan, a precise, almost accusatory flourish. Mr. Penshaw, Mildred began, her voice amplified by the hall's sound system, making her sound more imposing than she probably was. The complaint is clear. Your barbecue activities are creating an unacceptable odor nuisance within the community. Arthur took a deep breath. With all due respect, Mrs. McMillan, it's not just barbecue. It's my livelihood. I'm a chef. I run a kitchen at a Michelin-starred restaurant. I also happen to be a pitmaster. I smoke meat. It's what I do." He allowed a small smile to play on his lips, hoping to inject a bit of levity into the situation. "I assure you, the emissions you're referring to are carefully controlled. I use specific wood blends chosen for their aroma and flavor profiles. It's an art, Mrs. McMillan, not just a backyard grilling session." A man in the third row wearing a golf polo scoffed audibly. "Art, it smells like somebody's burning tires." Arthur's smile faltered. He pointed out, "I assure you tires have no place in my smoker. The wood is primarily hickory and cherry, seasoned with patience and precision. The meat is sourced from local farms, raised with care. I'm not just throwing charcoal and burgers on a grill." He gestured towards the citation again. "The suggestion that I switch to odorless electric heat is frankly absurd. It's impossible to achieve authentic smoked flavor without wood. It's like asking a painter to use watercolors instead of oil." Mildred adjusted her glasses, the movement sharp and precise. "The rules are the rules, Mr. Penshaw. They are designed to ensure the comfort and enjoyment of all residents. Some people find the smell of smoked meat unpleasant." "Unpleasant," Arthur repeated, incredulous. "I've had neighbors come over and ask for samples. I've even given out my recipes. Most people in this neighborhood are actually fans of my cooking, not victims of it." He scanned the room, seeking a sympathetic face, a sign of support. But the residents were a sea of blank stares, their expressions carefully neutral. Only the golf polo guy offered a sneer. "Mr. Penshaw," Mildred continued, her voice flat and unwavering, "the board has reviewed the complaint and the relevant covenants. We stand by the citation. You are in violation of Section 4.2, subsection B, paragraph 7, which clearly states that any activity resulting in undue atmospheric emissions, offensive noises, or other disturbances shall be deemed a nuisance and is prohibited." Arthur felt a surge of frustration. He'd practiced this speech, rehearsed his arguments, even brought in photos of his award-winning brisket. He thought logic, a little culinary education might sway them, but he was facing a wall of bureaucratic indifference. "But that rule wasn't meant to apply to something like this," Arthur protested. "It's meant for things like industrial waste or excessive noise late at night. It's not meant to stifle a small-scale culinary operation." Mildred remained unmoved. "The language is clear, Mr. Penshaw. It applies to any activity that causes a disturbance. And a disturbance, according to multiple complaints received, is precisely what your barbecue is creating." He wanted to argue, to plead, to explain the cultural significance of barbecue, the artistry, the passion. But he saw the set of Mildred's jaw, the unwavering glint in her eyes. He realized that logic and reason were irrelevant here. He was dealing with a force more powerful than taste buds or common sense, the unwavering, unyielding power of the homeowners association. The air in the community hall, once faintly lemony, now felt thick and suffocating. Arthur knew with a sinking feeling that this was just the beginning. The battle for barbecue had just begun. The hickory was recalcitrant. Still slick with dew, it demanded finesse, a careful waltz of paper and splintered wood before the tender flame embraced it. Ignoring the HOA's scarlet decree, Arthur hunkered beside Bertha, his smoke-stained confidant, shielding the nascent fire from wandering breezes. An old blues riff escaped his lips, a defiant melody against the dread gnawing at his insides. When the smoke finally unfurled, it was a delicate silver gray, promising savory depths. He drew it in, a stark contrast to the artificially sweetened air Mildred McMillan likely circulated in her pristine home. He pictured her, lips pinched, spying from behind starched lace, a miniature, disapproving idol. Let her glare. He was crafting art, damn it, palatable art. The first missive had been a courteous, if patronizing, request. The second, arriving a mere 48 hours later, was anything but. The burgeoning penalties were now in a stark boldface, highlighting a sum that knotted his gut. "Continued infractions will result in liens against your property," Mildred had dictated, her animosity so palpable it could be cut with a knife. He attempted reason, calling the HOA. Mildred's voice, honeyed yet sharp, met him. "Mr. Penshaw, the board has made its position abundantly clear. We will not condone unauthorized olfactory emissions. The regulations are quite specific." "Olfactory emissions? Mildred, it's barbecue. People pay for that aroma." He envisioned her perched, a meticulous organizer, amidst her perfectly alphabetized folders. "The scent profile is not aligned with community standards," she declared, then terminated the call. Arthur poured a finger of bourbon. He toyed with capitulation, dragging Bertha to the curb and eating humble pie. But then he conjured his grandfather, who had taught him the sacred rites of slow-cooked perfection, a man who never surrendered a battle, especially one rooted in principle and deliciousness. No, he would stand his ground. He implemented austerity measures. The fines were devouring his nest egg, the financial cushion he had painstakingly assembled over years of unforgiving kitchen shifts. He passed on lunches, brewing his morning coffee instead of indulging at the corner cafe. His wife Sarah observed the shift. "Arthur, you all right, hun? You seem on edge." He minimized it, dismissed it as workplace pressure. He didn't want to burden her, not yet. Her own fledgling enterprise already commanded her attention. Another note arrived, weightier than its predecessors. This one wasn't typed. It was painstakingly inscribed in Mildred's angular hand. The mood had undergone a chilling transformation from regulatory formality to personal contempt. "Mr. Penshaw," it began, "your persistent disregard for community expectations is not only egotistical but, quite frankly, repulsive. Several residents have reported headaches and queasiness. Consider your neighbors, sir, before subjecting them to your gastronomic exercises." The indictment wounded him. He wasn't poisoning anyone. He was disseminating joy, conjuring something exquisite. The notion that he was inflicting pain gave him pause. He surveyed his trim, manicured lawn, the cookie-cutter houses arrayed like dutiful sentinels. Were they genuinely suffering because of his barbecue? That night slumber deserted him. He thrashed, the fragrance of hickory smoke, once a comfort, now a barbed weapon aimed at his heart. He rose, approached the window, and gazed across the way. Mildred's dwelling was shrouded in darkness, a silent bastion of suburban sameness. He realized he had to do more than simply ignite Bertha and pray the tantalizing scent would somehow resolve the matter. This was transcending mere fines. It was a struggle for his very identity, a clash against the insipidity that threatened to consume his existence. He would retaliate not through aggression, but through flavor. He would reveal to them all the true essence of barbecue, even if it caused Mildred to choke on her organic, locally sourced, tasteless arugula. Arthur's thumb hammered his phone's shattered screen, each tap a frustrated drumbeat. Another penalty. Another levy bleeding him dry, courtesy of the HOA's relentless pursuit of backyard barbecue eradication. He needed to escalate. His contacts list unfurled, a digital Rolodex of gastronomic giants and emerging talents. Chefs he'd bested in culinary showdowns, influencers he'd courted with tasting menus, critics whose words could elevate or obliterate. The culinary A-team was about to be activated. First, Marco, a genius, yes, but also a powder keg, infamous for once launching a whole turbot in a rage. He picked up on the third ring, his voice a low growl. "Penshaw, what is it? I'm perfecting a reduction that could redefine the palate." Arthur cringed. "Marco, it's the HOA. They're trying to shut down my smoker." Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. Then a volcanic eruption that threatened Arthur's hearing. "They're what? Shut down your smoker? Are they mad? You could smoke shoe leather and make it sing. This is an abomination." Arthur detailed the citation, the escalating penalties, the sheer ridiculousness of the situation. He could practically feel Marco's temperature spiking. "This is culinary oppression. I'll draft a manifesto. We'll stage a demonstration. A barbecue-scented picket line outside their precious lawns." Next, Beatrice, the queen bee of food blogging whose pronouncements held the power of empires. Persuading her would be a steeper climb. "Arthur, darling," she purred, her tone laced with honeyed doubt. "An HOA objecting to barbecue. Are you pulling my leg? It sounds like a sitcom reject." He forwarded the citation. A drawn-out pause, then a sharp gasp. "Good Lord, unapproved atmospheric emissions. They're fining you for smelling divine. This is beyond satire. Count me in. I'll pen a piece so biting it'll curl their manicured lawns." A spark of hope flickered within Arthur. He devoted the next hour to crafting a social media battle cry, agonizing over each phrase. He aimed for outrage, wit, relatability, and virality. He scrapped several attempts before landing on a winner. He led with a snapshot of his beloved smoker gleaming under the sun's golden kiss. The caption declared, "They want to silence the symphony of smoke. They want to banish the brisket. My HOA, in their infinite wisdom, has deemed my barbecue unacceptable. Apparently the perfume of smoked meat offends their delicate senses. I'm facing fines, threats, all for the crime of crafting delicious food." He laid bare the ridiculousness of the situation, the citation for unapproved atmospheric emissions, the demand for odorless electric heat. He concluded with a call to arms: join me in this fight against culinary control, spread this message. Let the HOA understand that freedom smells like barbecue. He tagged Marco and Beatrice, along with a dozen other prominent foodies and chefs. He unleashed it into the digital world, then held his breath as the metrics began to climb. Like shares, comments a trickle at first, then a surging flood. People were incensed, they were amused. They shared tales of their own HOA battles, their own rebellions against conformity and trivial rules. #Save Arthur's Smoker Barbecue Brawl Culinary Curfew. The hashtags exploded across the internet. Arthur devoured the comments, a tapestry of support, fury, and disbelief. He saw Marco's incendiary open letter, a scathing critique of the HOA's actions. He saw Beatrice's blog post, a clever skewering of suburban tyranny. The cavalry culinary division had arrived. Now he just had to hope they could conquer the war. Arthur Penshaw jolted awake to the shrill insistence of his phone. A galaxy of notifications blazed across the screen, a host of unfamiliar app icons vying for attention. Last night's Facebook post, intended as a mere grumble about the citation, had detonated. He hadn't foreseen this tidal wave. The scanned image of Mildred McMillan's prim, meticulous script, detailing the unauthorized atmospheric emissions from his yard, had gone viral. Culinary blogs were in a frenzy. Barbecue aficionados were up in arms. Save Arthur's Smoker and Harmony Glades Hates Flavor dominated Twitter trends. A strange brew of vindication and apprehension bubbled within him. He was a chef, damn it, not a crusader. He simply craved the space to slow smoke his ribs. One notification cut through the noise, an email from Belly Up, a well-regarded online food journal. Arthur, your story's gold. This is blatant overreach. Let's connect. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, he tapped out a reply. By midday, a reporter buzzed around his patio, the ghost of hickory smoke still lingering in the air. Arthur, usually a man of few words, found himself vehemently defending his right to barbecue, his right to innovation, his right to infuse the air with something richer than manicured lawns and enforced monotony. The reporter, Chloe, a woman with an insatiable gleam in her eyes, practically vibrated with excitement. This is bigger than barbecue, Arthur. It's about liberation, gastronomic liberation. Behind her pristine lace curtains, Mildred McMillan monitored the interview, her lips drawn into a taut line of disapproval. She witnessed the digital firestorm. The Harmony Glades Facebook group had become a digital coliseum, residents locked in conflict between Arthur's defenders and stalwart HOA loyalists. She remained baffled by the uproar. Rules were rules, immutable and clear. And the scent of smoked meat, irrespective of its allure to some, constituted a nuisance. The following day, the article dropped like a bombshell. Barbecue banned, HOA crushes culinary artist, the comments section erupted. Food lovers nationwide lambasted the HOA's stance. Donations flooded Arthur's online legal fund. Demands for a demonstration began to circulate. Arthur felt besieged. He'd only sought to challenge a trivial fine, not ignite a cultural revolution. However, the groundswell of support proved undeniable. He felt obligated to stand firm, not solely for his own sake, but for every cook ever accused of creations being too pungent, too spicy, too vibrant. Then Saturday dawned with a low rumble. Peering through the window, Arthur beheld an astonishing sight. A convoy of food trucks snaked into Harmony Glades. They hailed from every corner of the state, each truck a rolling declaration of culinary independence. Smockin' Joe's Barbecue, the spice merchant, vegan victory, yes, we grill too. The trucks formed a vibrant, aromatic bulwark against the beige uniformity of Harmony Glades. The air crackled with sizzling fats, the whir of spice grinders, and the cheerful din of an expanding crowd. Mildred McMillan stormed out of her residence, her face a study in outrage. This is a flagrant breach of community bylaws, she squawked, brandishing a clipboard, but nobody paid her any mind. Arthur, positioned proudly by his beloved smoker, watched as people queued at the trucks, their faces illuminated with anticipation. He observed a young girl savor a bite of pulled pork, her eyes widening in bliss. He noticed a group of neighbors, previously confined to polite head nods, now laughing and sharing anecdotes over dishes of fiery tacos. The barbecue rebellion had commenced. And for the first time in ages, Harmony Glades exuded an aroma richer than neatly fertilized lawns and quiet desperation. The rebellion's scent was freedom. The early morning sun, usually a welcome sight, felt to Mildred McMillan like a personal affront. It glinted off the chrome of those abominations parked brazenly on Oak Drive, mocking her authority. She adjusted her grip on the triplicate parking violation forms, the crisp paper a small comfort in this chaotic new reality. The aroma of smoked meats, thick and cloying, hung in the air, a fragrant declaration of war. "Excuse me." She called, her voice sharper than intended, towards a food truck painted with a cartoon pig wearing sunglasses. A young man with a bandana tied around his forehead emerged, wiping his hands on a greasy apron. "This is a residential street. You can't just park here and sell whatever it is you're selling." The young man, whose name tag read Dale, gave her a weary look. "We got permission," he mumbled, gesturing vaguely towards Arthur's house. "He's the man." "Mission from whom?" "From him," Mildred sputtered, jabbing a finger in the general direction of Arthur's brightly colored picnic tables where a small crowd was already gathering, plates in hand. "This is a violation of Harmony Glades HOA regulations. Section 4, subsection C, paragraph 12 clearly states that commercial activity is strictly prohibited on residential streets." She brandished the parking ticket like a weapon. Dale shrugged. "Look, lady, I'm just mackin' a livin'." "Talk to the pitmaster." He retreated back into the truck, the rhythmic thump of reggae music emanating from within. Mildred moved on to the next truck, a vibrant purple monstrosity advertising vegan barbecue. The irony was almost too much to bear. She slapped a ticket on the windshield with a satisfying thwack, ignoring the questioning glance from the woman inside, who was meticulously slicing plant-based ribs. She continued down the line, a one-woman army against the barbecue rebellion. Each ticket felt like a small victory, a desperate attempt to restore order to her carefully curated world. But with each step, the aroma of smoked brisket grew stronger, the crowd larger, the sense of her own powerlessness more profound. Meanwhile, Arthur sat in a sterile office downtown, the scent of disinfectant battling unsuccessfully against the lingering aroma of hickory smoke clinging to his clothes. He felt profoundly out of place amidst the mahogany furniture and leather-bound books. Across from him sat Ms. Eleanor Vance, a lawyer with sharp eyes and an even sharper wit. "So, Mr. Penshaw," she said, adjusting her glasses, "the HOA is claiming your culinary activities are a nuisance and a violation of their covenants." Arthur nodded, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "That's the gist of it. They started with the smell, then the smoke, now they're ticketing the food trucks. It's escalating." Eleanor steepled her fingers. "And you believe this is an infringement on your rights, an unreasonable restriction?" "It's more than that," Arthur said, his voice gaining strength. "It's about freedom. Freedom to express myself, to share my passion, to run a freaking barbecue in my own backyard without getting harassed by a bunch of, well, you've seen the letters." Eleanor smiled, a glint of steel in her eye. "I have. They're colorful and potentially actionable. I think we have grounds for a lawsuit. We can argue that their restrictions are overly broad, arbitrary, and that they are actively interfering with your livelihood and your right to enjoy your property." Arthur felt a flicker of hope, a small ember glowing in the face of overwhelming anxiety. "So, you think we can win?" "Winning is a relative term, Mr. Penshaw, but I think we can make them think twice. At the very least, we can make them spend some serious money defending their position. And," she added, leaning forward, "we can make sure this gets some attention. The media loves a David versus Goliath story." A week later, the lawsuit was filed. Arthur Penshaw versus the Harmony Glades Homeowners Association. The document, typed in formal legal language, felt surprisingly empowering in his hands. It was a declaration of independence, a formal challenge to the forces of bland conformity. He handed a copy to Dale, who let out a whoop and taped it to the side of his food truck. The news spread like wildfire. Local news outlets picked up the story, followed by regional blogs and eventually a brief mention on a national food website. The barbecue rebellion was gaining momentum. Mildred McMillan, however, remained unconvinced. She saw only chaos, a breakdown of order, and a fragrant, smoky cloud obscuring the true values of Harmony Glades. The battle lines were drawn, the smell of barbecue hung heavy in the air, and the legal war was officially underway. The lawsuit ignited like a discarded match in a dry forest. The local paper sniffed it out first, crafting a folksy piece titled "Barbecue versus Red Tape," showcasing Arthur Penshaw's deft brisket carving alongside a severe portrait of Mildred McMillan, looking like she'd swallowed the HOA rulebook whole. Then the story ballooned to national blogs, restaurant critics, and even a cable news appearance where a slightly overwhelmed, yet charming Arthur defended his God-given right to smoke some meat without a hassle. Harmony Glades was never quite the same. The hushed streets, once paragons of suburban conformity, pulsed with unanticipated commotion. Broadcast trucks marred perfect lawns. Spectators ambled by, gossiping and pointing. A small but fervent group of protesters, brandishing signs proclaiming "Let Arthur cook" and "Freedom smells like barbecue," rallied outside the HOA offices. From behind her curtains, Mildred McMillan observed the spectacle, a tight band constricting her chest. She hadn't envisioned this firestorm. Her only desire was to uphold the community standards, to maintain order in a neighborhood that seemed to be slowly fraying at the edges. Now, she felt like the designated villain in a drama she hadn't signed up for. Enter the Food Network. They descended like a technicolor plague, vans plastered with logos, cameras glinting under the bright Carolina sun. A flurry of activity consumed Harmony Glades as they prepped for their special. Barbecue Brawl, Harmony Glades Edition. The concept was simple, a neighborhood cook-off judged by culinary luminaries. Arthur naturally was the headliner, but other residents were encouraged to participate, flaunting their skills or lack thereof at the grill. The victor would claim a golden spatula and bragging rights for a year. Arthur, initially hesitant to embody culinary rebellion, embraced the challenge. He recognized it as an opportunity to not just champion his passion, but to unite the community, demonstrating that barbecue transcended mere sustenance. It was about sharing fellowship and savoring simple joys. He fashioned his backyard into a barbecue sanctuary. Smokers exhaled fragrant clouds of hickory. Tables groaned under the weight of spices, sauces, and rubs. He devoted hours to meticulously preparing his ribs, anointing them with his secret blend of aromatics and coaxing the meat to achieve sublime tenderness. The neighborhood kids flocked to him, mesmerized by his movements, their faces illuminated by the glowing embers. He even offered samples of his trademark Penshaw's pulled pork mini sandwiches. Mildred, meanwhile, grew increasingly estranged. The HOA scrambled for public relations damage control, issuing carefully crafted statements emphasizing their dedication to community participation and reasonable guidelines. She was directed to maintain a low profile, to abstain from further interaction with the media or residents. The order felt like a reprimand, a confirmation of her perceived failure. The day of the cook-off broke crisp and luminous. The air vibrated with the intoxicating fragrance of roasting meats. The Food Network camera's word, capturing every sizzle, every char, every blissful bite. Arthur, flanked by family and friends, was in his element. He moved with a newfound confidence that belied his earlier unease. He was a pitmaster, a maestro of the grill, a man in his element. He was also a symbol, whether he liked it or not, of resisting petty restrictions and advocating for the right to pursue one's passion. As the judges sampled his ribs, the crowd fell silent. Arthur watched, his features etched with intense focus. He knew he had poured his heart and soul into this contest. He knew he had given it his all, but ultimately it transcended the ribs themselves. It was about something grander, something deeper. It was about standing up for one's convictions, even against formidable odds. From the dimness of her living room, Mildred observed the broadcast on TV, a strange cocktail of resentment and reluctant respect churning within her. She saw Arthur, radiant and self-assured, surrounded by cheering neighbors. She saw the spirited community that had once been so orderly and predictable now teeming with vitality. And for the first time, a seed of doubt sprouted. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had been mistaken. The air vibrated with anticipation. Not just the hum of generators powering the makeshift outdoor kitchens that lined Harmony Glades Central Park, but a deeper, almost palpable energy. Celebrity chefs, faces familiar from countless cooking shows, strolled through the crowd, their expressions a mixture of professional curiosity and genuine amusement. Arthur, sweat beading on his forehead despite the early hour, felt a thrill course through him. He was in his element. He glanced at his setup, a beautiful offset smoker he'd lovingly nicknamed Bess. She was already purring, smoke curling from her chimney, carrying the sweet, savory aroma of hickory and applewood. Across the way, shiny chrome electric grills sat silent, their owners looking anxious. Mildred McMillan's absence was conspicuous. He hadn't seen her leave her house all day, but he imagined her peeking through the curtains. The judges, a trio of discerning palates, stopped at each station. When they reached Arthur, he offered them a sample of his brisket, sliced thin and glistening with rendered fat. "Been smoking this for 14 hours, he said, his voice calm despite the pounding in his chest. "Dry rubbed with a blend of spices I've been perfecting for 20 years. Chef Ramirez, known for his fiery temper and even fierier love of authentic flavors, took a bite, closed his eyes, and sighed. "That, my friend," he declared, "is barbecue." The others, Chef Dubois, famous for her delicate pastries, and Chef Ito, a master of minimalist Japanese cuisine, offered equally effusive praise. The electric grills, in contrast, received polite but unenthusiastic nods. Their offerings were bland, soulless even. The afternoon stretched on, a blur of smoke, meat, and nervous chatter. Arthur worked steadily, tending to Bess' basting ribs and chatting with the growing crowd. He felt alive, connected to something larger than himself. He was sharing his passion, his heritage, his love of food. Finally, the judges gathered on a small stage. The crowd hushed. Chef Ramirez stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "we have tasted some interesting attempts at barbecue today, but there is one that stood above the rest, one that captured the soul of barbecue. The winner is Arthur Penshaw." The crowd erupted. Arthur, stunned, felt himself hoisted onto shoulders, carried through the cheering throng. He saw faces he recognized, neighbors he'd never spoken to before, now smiling and clapping. The smell of victory, thick and sweet, mingled with the lingering aroma of smoked meat. Later that evening, after the cook-off had been dismantled and the last stragglers had wandered home, a different kind of announcement arrived. The HOA, through its lawyer, released a statement. The lawsuit, it read, had been settled. The grilling restrictions were rescinded. Furthermore, the HOA publicly apologized for any inconvenience caused to Mr. Penshaw and the residents of Harmony Glades. Arthur read the statement on his porch, a smile playing on his lips. He knew that the threat of further media exposure, coupled with the very real possibility of losing a costly legal battle, had forced their hand. The HOA president, no doubt under immense pressure from residents and insurance adjusters, had finally caved. He looked towards Mildred McMillan's house. The lights were off. He wondered if she was regretting her actions, if she understood the damage she'd caused. He felt a pang of sympathy, quickly overshadowed by a sense of profound relief. The next day, Harmony Glades was different. The air was lighter, the atmosphere more relaxed. People were talking to each other, sharing recipes, planning backyard barbecues. The local hardware store sold out of charcoal and grilling tools. Arthur found himself a minor celebrity. Neighbors stopped him on the street, asking for tips, for recipes, for a chance to taste his legendary brisket. He obliged, happily sharing his knowledge, his passion. He started offering informal barbecue classes in his backyard, teaching anyone who wanted to learn the secrets of slow-smoked perfection. Harmony Glades, once a bastion of bland conformity, was now a culinary hotspot. The Food Network special aired a few months later. Harmony Glades, once a place of quiet, manufactured perfection, was now synonymous with delicious, authentic barbecue. The show highlighted Arthur's story, his struggle against the HOA, and his ultimate triumph. It showcased the community's newfound appreciation for good food and good company. Arthur watched the show with his neighbors, the air thick with smoke and laughter. He raised his glass. "To Harmony Glades," he said, "may our future be filled with flavor." Mildred McMillan remained an enigma. She was occasionally seen tending her garden, her face pale and drawn, a stark contrast to the vibrant community that had blossomed around her. She kept to herself, a silent observer in a world she no longer seemed to understand. The scent of smoked meat, once her enemy, now hung permanently in the air, a constant reminder of her defeat.